All right, welcome to another video by Designers Medicine. Today's video is vitamin D and a biblical overview of what it is, why it's important, and why we need to be aware of it. So as always, what we're going to do is we're going to start with going to scripture. So 1 John 1:5. This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. Now, this really can't be overstated. We always associate the light with a spiritual light, which is absolutely true, right? There's no question about that. But what we need to realize is there's also a physical light, right? The sun provides light for the entire world, and we wouldn't be here without that. So the light is critical in both the spiritual and the physical sense. And vitamin D is that representation in the physical sense. Vitamin D comes from sunlight. Vitamin D is the God vitamin, right? Because it is what? It's from the light. Plants, animals, and people all absorb the light and therefore increase levels of vitamin D. So when you're out in the sun, working in your garden or out there on the beach, whatever you're doing, you are increasing your vitamin D levels. But you also get it from food. So if you go out there and you have some fish, you're going to get some vitamin D from the fish, which was absorbed from the sun. So it all comes from the sun, but you're going to get multiple sources that increase your vitamin D levels. Did you know? The number one predictor of poor COVID outcomes was low vitamin D. Now, that's a bold statement, right? The number one predictor of poor COVID outcomes was low vitamin D. How many times did you hear that on the news? Was that really, really well shared? Was everyone talking about how important vitamin D was? I think if you were in the alternate media, you probably were seeing that, but otherwise you weren't seeing that, which is important, right? Because people were dying because of lack of vitamin D. And we didn't talk about vitamin D. We didn't talk about the importance of the light, of the God vitamin. We talked about how we needed to have vaccines that were going to change our DNA. That was only solution. Well, that's a little bit of a problem. Secondly, the darker your skin is, the less vitamin D you absorb. All right, so if you're a black man living in Seattle, what do you think your vitamin D is? 10, 15 maybe? It's going to be very, very low because you're not going to absorb the light as well, and you're not going to have as much sunshine available to do that. That's a problem. We have to be aware of this with regards to our health. It's very, very important. Okay, so what's a normal vitamin D level? Well, normal levels are 20 to 100. Now, if you look at this, first of all, what jumps out at you? 20 to 100 is all normal. Does that make sense? There's a 5-fold difference in every single value is considered normal. That's not even logical. That's ridiculous. Many experts recommend a level between 20 and 40. So rickets is a pretty profound bone disease, and rickets occurs just below 20. So what we do is we say, okay, how do we prevent rickets? We'll make sure we go above 20. Rickets is no longer a problem, and then we're going to say it's a normal value. Well, that's absurd, right? Because there's a lot of other diseases that occur well above 20, but we disregard those and we don't say, we're not worried about those. We're not going to worry about, keeping that level nice and high. Well, what else is associated? Well, let's go through it. What diseases correlate with low vitamin D? Well, let's start. Breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, fractures, multiple sclerosis, heart attacks, kidney cancer, endometrial cancer, rickets. And this is just a partial list. This isn't even a comprehensive list. So many diseases, including autoimmune and cancer, are correlated with low vitamin D. And yet we don't even focus on it. It's not even a thing, right? We kind of avoid the light in a lot of ways for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But did you know there's nearly an 80% reduction in breast cancer rates in women with a vitamin D level over 50? 80% reduction. Now, granted, that was a single study, but it doesn't matter. There's studies that are showing these levels. There's over a 50% reduction in multiple sclerosis with levels over 50. 50%, half, cuts your autoimmune rate with multiple sclerosis in half with a level over 50. And yet 20 is normal, right? Yeah, not so much. There's nearly a 70% reduction in type 1 diabetes with levels over 50, right? So we're talking about cancer and autoimmune rates drastically plummeting with rates over 50, levels over 50. We have to know these things. So why is our vitamin D so low? Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, our foods are garbage, right? Our food supply is garbage. It's filled with pesticides. It's genetically modified. It's processed. It has no nutritional value. That's part of the problem. Secondly, our work environment. Most of us work inside. We're working in offices. We're sitting at desks. We're sitting there typing all day. We don't go outside, right? And then some people work at night. They work swing shift. They're not getting exposed to the sun. There is no light. And then when you have garbage foods on top of that, yeah, we're going to have a low vitamin D level. But that's also compounded by the fact that there's this huge fear of the sun now. Everyone's terrified of skin cancer. So we're going to use sunscreen every time we do go out to the sun. That doesn't make any sense because then you're not absorbing any vitamin D. So here's the kicker. There is a huge correlation between low vitamin D and skin cancer. When you don't ever get vitamin D, you're not absorbing it. Therefore, you don't have any immune protection against it. You're more likely to get skin cancer if you have low vitamin D. You have to have exposure to the sun that helps you get more vitamin D, and then your skin cancer rates go down. Right? It's not that hard to comprehend. No, we don't want burns. You don't want to be out at the beach for 10 hours at a time with no sunscreen because that's going to be stupid. But in moderation, you're going to get higher levels of vitamin D when you get a nice base tan and then get more and more exposure. We've been on this planet for millennia and it hasn't been a problem until now. And all of a sudden we've got to run from the sun. It's going to kill us all. It doesn't make any sense. It's not even logical. Here's the other kicker though. Most primary cares don't check vitamin D and insurance won't pay for it. Does that make any sense? Insurance won't even pay for a vitamin D level unless you have a documented low level. That's ridiculous. I just showed you all the things that are correlated with vitamin D. It's almost like, I know, it sounds crazy. It's almost like the insurance companies don't care about your health. Baffling. All right, so that's a quick overview of vitamin D, what it is and why it's important. We're going to have future videos that have far more detail and what you can do about that. But generally speaking, just understand vitamin D is critical. So thank you for being here at Designers Medicine, and thank you for taking your health into your own hands.